And here we go. Woo! The male professor is in his house. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, brothers? It is Friday. It is Friday. It is Friday. And I am yours truly. Yours truly. The mad professor. It is a Friday afternoon. What's going on, Corey Green? I see you, man. Much respect to you, man. It's a Friday afternoon. My clock says it is 3:56 p.m. on the East Coast. Yeah, and this is January the 20th, 2023. What's going on? Yeah. That's right, my brother. We can't be stopped. 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 Yeah. Welcome to another Man Professor broadcast, guys. I am excited. I am happy today. I am elated. I am filled with nothing but exuberance. Woo. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Let's get ready to rumble! What's happening, Dre McMillan? What's happening? What's happening? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. 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 We have to talk about the evolution of the passport bros, the evolution of the passport bros. Guys, you know, this has been a hell of a week. Oh my God, that passport bros is officially global. It is officially global. Passport bros is all over international social media. Passport bros are kicking up dust. I want to give a shout out to the young brother, Austin Holloman. Shout out to you, my brother. Shout out to you. Austin Holloman is a young guy. He's only 23 years old. 23, guys. 23. 23. I am 49 years old. I'm 49 years old, guys. 49. If you guys can hear me loud and clear in the chat, just put one in the chat if y'all can hear me loud and clear. 23 years old. 23 years old. Austin Holloman is 23. I am 49 years old. I will be 50. I would turn 50. I'm going to turn 50 in September of this year, on September the 6th, 2023. Guys, do you know where I was and what I was doing when I was 23 years old? Man, that's a long time ago. It's a long time ago. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What's up, Ray Knowles? What's up, Black Scorpion? What's going on, G Darius 10? What's going on? What's going on? Do you know where I was, man, when I was 23 years old? Do you know what I was doing when I was 23 years old? Brother, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, I was. Yes, I was. 1996. 1996. Y'all get the likes up. Y'all get the likes up. Y'all share and y'all subscribe. We got to walk through. We got to walk through what is going on right now, and we have to walk through and talk about the future. This stream today is about right now and the future. Black man's option. What's happening? That's right. I'm here. Shout out, I'm gonna give a shout out to BMO. BMO is in the house. BMO is in the house. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Shout out to all my brothers who are traveling. BMO are the vets. These are the veterans. Y'all see the Black Man's Option. Y'all sign up. If you all have not subscribed to the Black Man's Option and their YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the Black Man's Option. This is a group of networking Black men. This is a group of entrepreneurial, enterprising Black men. This is an international group of Black men. Black men from all across the Black diaspora, all across the world. And these men are movers and they are shakers. These men are money makers. These men are investors. These men are diplomats. These men are cosmopolitan. These men have been all around the planet, all parts of Asia, all parts of Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa. These men are not playing. And I want to give a shout out also to all of the other Black men who also engage in networking through travel, who encourage travel across the world. Black man, Black man, Black man, Black man. If you are in your 20s, if you are in your 30s and you do not have a U.S. passport, we're going to say this over and over and over and over again. We need you to go and get your passport. It is an investment that you will never, ever, 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 ever regret. But guys, in 1996, I was 23 years old living in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. This was the time of Freaknik. Freaknik. Some of you guys are old enough to remember the festivities associated with this time. It happened every single year. In Atlanta, they called it Black College Weekend. This was the era. This was the era of Luther Campbell, Uncle Luke, Don't Stop, Get It, Get It. This was the era when booty shake music and bounce music, shout out to New Orleans, shout out to Cash Money Records, shout out to No Limit Records, shout out to Baby, shout out to his brother Ronald, Baby and Ronald Williams, the Williams brothers. Shout out to all the Black men who were a part of that era making music. This was the time of the Shiny Suit Man. This was the time of Sean Diddy Combs. We know him as Diddy today. The Notorious B.I.G., Tupac Shakur, East versus West, East versus West. Y'all remember that? Death Row Records, Death Row Records. And when I was 23 years old, I was having the time of my life in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. This was the golden age of Atlanta as being the Black Mecca of the United States. I moved from Miami, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia to go to school, to work on a master's degree. And I got there and I encountered the world. I encountered the world, a world full of people. Black people from all across the United States, Black people from all across the diaspora. I met people, brown people, your South Asians, lots of Latinos or Hispanics, as they used to be called. Sometimes they still call them Hispanics. But people all over the world. Hartsfield International Airport was just as busy back then as it is today. This was before all of the sprawl. This was before all of the congestion that now currently exists in Atlanta. I would not live in Atlanta today. I would not live in Atlanta today, brother. Atlanta is just too congested. It is just too much of everything. But when I was there, oh, I can't forget about Jermaine Dupri and So Def. I can't forget about Little John and the East Side Boys. I can't forget about 3-6 Mafia out of Memphis. They were tearing the clubs up. They were having the battles of crunk during that particular time. I remember. This was the era of the strip club. This was the era when Magic City, y'all know Magic City. Magic City was the king of strip clubs at that particular time, and there were strip clubs all over the city of Atlanta. There was the Gentleman's Club on Peachtree. Woo! And I used to work at a mall. Peachtree Central Mall, which was right on Peachtree. I worked full time as a security guard on Peachtree at Peachtree Mall. And the mall was located right around the corner from the Gentleman's Club. And that Gentleman's Club was packed every single night. And those were some of the best years of my 20s. But I'm gonna tell you, when I was in my 20s at that time, I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to see as much of the world as I possibly could. But at that particular time, I could not see the world. I could not travel the world. Number one, because I was a struggling student working on a master's degree, working full time as a security guard. Limited resources. I had no car. I had very little. I was building myself up. At the age of 23. But I had visions. Of grandeur. And I had a goal, and I had a plan. And one of the things that I said at that particular time, when I was 23 years old, was that I was going to make it a point to see half of the world, at least half of the world, before I turned 35. That was my goal. At the age of 23, my goal was to put myself in a position so that by the time I had reached the age of 35, I would have traveled half of the globe. Now, I got to tell you guys, and I have to fast forward, although I had those aspirations when I was 23, although I had those aspirations at that particular time, that was my goal. By the time that I turned 35, I had barely scratched. I had barely scratched the surface of my travel goals. I had barely scratched the surface. It didn't quite happen the way I planned it. And it did not happen because of various reasons, because I was working and because I still was building myself up. I had traveled. I had done some traveling outside the country by the time I turned 35. But I had barely scratched the surface of my goal of seeing half of the world. This young brother, Austin Holloman, is doing something right now. He is doing something right now that very few Black American men who are not in the military now, very few Black men who are not in the military can do. He's doing something that is rare. This is rare for a young Black man as a solo traveler to get on a plane apart from the military or apart from some job, working for corporate America, working for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was very big Coca-Cola in Atlanta at that particular time, and it's still a big employer. Coca-Cola was perhaps the biggest employer in the city of Atlanta when I was there, when I was 23 years old, okay? And this man is on an adventure. He is on an adventure. He is doing what every young man who has no wife, who doesn't have any children, who doesn't have significant debt, he is doing what every young man, and I'm going to say this, every young Black man, he is doing what every young Black man who is in his early 20s should be doing. And what is he doing? He is engaging the world. He is testing the world. He is making mistakes as he tests the world. He is going through a process of trial and error. Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. It is ridiculous. It is foolish. It is asinine. It is completely insane and absurd to expect a young Black man who is 23 years old to live, move, breathe, and make decisions in the same fashion as a Black man who is 35 years old, a Black man who is 40 years old, a Black man who is 45 years old, a Black man who's 50, 60, so on and so forth. You get the picture. Thank you, Volcanist. Thank you, Volcanist. Thank you. Good to see you, my brother. Good to see you, my guy. Y'all get the likes up. Y'all share. Y'all subscribe to the channel. We have to talk about this. This is about the evolution of the Passport Bros. This is about evolution. 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 What happens to you between your early 20s, he's 23, but let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to 18. Let's go back to the age of 18. From 18 to 30, you evolve, you develop, you grow, especially if you are intent and deliberate in engaging in a deliberate process of growth. A deliberate process of growth, human development, human evolution. And the process of growth and evolution is one that exists across the lifespan. You don't stop growing at 30, you continue to grow. You continue to evolve. And the natural process of evolution should make you a stronger, a wiser, it should make you a better human being. So who you are at the age of 30, 35, and 40 should not be who you were when you were 18, when you were 20, when you were 23, when you were 25. This is growth. And I want to make this emphatically clear that this young man did nothing. He did nothing that is outside of the realm of human growth and evolution. He did absolutely nothing outside the realm of growth. Thank you, Tim Howard. Good to see you. Good to see you. We're at 5,000. The channel, my channel is at 5,000 right now. My channel is at 5,000 right now. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's right. BMI. BMI, Black Men's Independence. BMA, Black Men's Agency. BME, Black Men's Empowerment. BMH, Black Men's Happiness. And I want to accent the very last one, we're going to talk about all of them, but BMH, Black Men's Happiness. Happiness, happiness. What are the rewards of travel? What are the rewards of being or becoming a passport bro? The rewards are peace. The rewards are happiness. And I'm going to add an additional reward, the reward of prosperity. I am the Mad Professor. This is the Mad Professor broadcast. This is the Mad Professor broadcast. Guys, we are living in an age of evolution. We are living in a 21st century age of evolution through globalization and technology. Austin Holloman is a reflection. He is a product of this age of evolution through globalization and technology. There are no longer any borders. There are no longer any borders. There are no borders. There is nothing that separates us. Those of us who are in the United States, there is nothing that separates us in a profound way from the rest of the world. Technology, communications, iPhones, Androids. Y'all know I got my janky Android. You guys know I got my janky Android. I got my janky Android. I got my janky Android right here. Nothing separates us from the rest of the world. The world outside the West, it affects us, and we affect it. It affects us, we affect it. Right now, we are seeing another chapter in history, in human history, because globalization is a historical process. It is a historical process. Globalization, and basically the elimination of borders, the growth of technology, immigration, travel, economic exchange, the exchange of currency, the exchange of natural resources, the exchange of goods and services, the exchange of cultures, the exchange of DNA, the exchange of biology is something that is continuous. It's a continuous process. And we are players. We are players in this entire process. And this young man coming from the Z generation, he is a player because he has grown up with technology, grown up with these tools in ways that are unimaginable to people who came before us, okay? Unimaginable. Being mobile, being fluid, the ability to go from place to place, interacting with other human beings in other environments, in other contexts. That's a part of the evolutionary process that is endemic to globalization. But guys, here's the thing. Salute to all you brothers. Billy Laser, what's going on, man? Good to see you, my brother. Coach Lamont, good to see you, my brother. Good to see you. Good to see you. Chukwu Igwe, good to see you. Brother Mike Johnson, good to see you. Good to see you. Y'all get the likes up. Y'all share. Y'all subscribe. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the super chats. You got the Cash App. Cash App. $ BMI 3000. Cash App. $ BMI 3000. This is a Friday edition of the Mad Professor Broadcast, and we're talking about the evolution of passport bros, the evolution of passport bros. And I want to say this, and I'm going to say this over and over and over and over again, that evolution is not an easy process. Evolution is not an easy process. Evolution comes with tension. Evolution comes with convulsions. Evolution comes with disruptions. Evolution forces the production of new ideas. Evolution forces the production, the creation of new practices. Evolution forces human beings to adapt, to adjust, to realign their selves in relation to what is inevitable social, political, and cultural change. And the thing about this type of evolution that I'm talking about, it can be so difficult. It can be so difficult that you're going to have some people, you're going to have some human beings who will be incapable. They will be incapable of adapting and adjusting to change. I'm going to say this. This is part of the difficulty of evolution. You will have human beings who are going to run into a brick wall because they do not have the wherewithal, they do not have the sensibilities, they might not even have the resources, the tools, the instruments needed to change, to shift, to adapt as the world, as the environment around them adapts and shifts and changes. So I'm going to say something that's very, very harsh. I'm going to say something that's very, very harsh. In the United States, we have a whole process called gentrification. Gentrification, you guys know what gentrification is. And gentrification is taking place all over the United States. And gentrification in particular has hit poor people, poor Black people in particular, and poor people in general, those who have limited resources. It has hit them hard. There are places that were once understood primarily as Black places: New York City, Brooklyn, the boroughs, Brooklyn, Queens, Harlem, the Bronx, Staten Island, Long Island, so on and so forth. There are places in California, you've got Watts, you've got Oakland, you've got Los Angeles. Hell, there are places in Atlanta, there are cities all over the country where you have high concentrations of Black people who have been hit by gentrification. They have been hit by a process that has created tremendous difficulties for them. And these Black people have had to figure out, and they're trying to figure out what to do. As new technologies, as new money, new everything basically takes over, drives people out. The people who have been there for decades, for generations. And the process of gentrification is a legal process. There's nothing illegal about gentrification. Gentrification is criticized politically, and it is criticized as a moral problem, but there's nothing illegal about gentrification if it is done legally. So Black people have had to respond. And how have some Black people responded? Here's one way that Black people have responded. I live in North Carolina. I live in the region, the southern region of the United States. And one thing that has happened in recent years as a result of gentrification, as a result of this globalized process that is happening right now in the United States, the impact of globalization in the US, that Black people have had to migrate. They've had to migrate. So there are lots of Black people who are from the city of New York, who were born and raised there. They were raised in those boroughs. And as prices have risen, and as new technologies have emerged, as they've been basically pushed into a corner, these Black people packed their bags. They packed their bags and they headed to the southern part of the United States. So where I live in North Carolina, and I will include the state of South Carolina as well, which is a neighbor of North Carolina, you have a whole bunch of people from the East Coast, a whole bunch of Black folk from the East Coast that are coming back to the South. They're coming back to southern states to readapt, to readjust, to start their lives over again, because it is no longer possible for them to live where they were born and raised. And this is true not only for people in New York, but it's true for people in Pennsylvania. It is true for people in Massachusetts. It is true for people all along the East Coast. And what is happening on the East Coast is also happening on the West Coast. So you have lots of people, because of globalization, in California in particular, they're being driven out of the state of California because they cannot adapt to the changes that are happening in California. And they too are headed to southern states. So they're headed to Texas, they're headed to Louisiana. Hell, some are even going to Mississippi, trying to start all over again. But the point is, guys, is that they are readjusting. They are adapting. Those are the difficulties that come with globalization. Those are the difficulties that come with change. Those are the difficulties that come with this type of evolution. Cultural evolution, which is being instigated. Here's the thing, cultural evolution that is being instigated by technology. It's being instigated by technology. It is being instigated by money. It is being instigated by migrations. So here in the US, we have this ongoing crisis, or this ongoing concern, the political system, about immigrants, undocumented immigrants who are constantly trying to come into the United States, undocumented, from Mexico, from Venezuela, from various parts of Latin America. You got people who are fleeing Haiti. They're fleeing Haiti so that they would be able to go to an environment that is seemingly favorable, or more favorable than the environment that they were born and raised in. This is globalization. So globalization can either be a positive force where you can take advantage of it and you can social engineer your life. You can become your own social engineer in a very positive way and create a new life, or it can make your life very difficult because for whatever reason, you are unable to cope with the changes that are taking place all around you. What's going on, Brandon Penn? Good to see you, my brother. Good to see you, good to see you, good to see you, good to see you, good to see you. We've got 42 people who are watching, 42 people who are watching in the house. Passport Bros is about evolution. Passport Bros is about change. It's about change. And the reason why there is so much backlash toward Passport Bros is because Passport Bros is an evolution. It's a part of the evolution of the world. It is a part of the globalized process that is happening in the world, where men are adjusting and adapting to changing conditions, the changing conditions in the world. And Passport Bros are adapting in a positive way, Thank you, Brandon Penn. Good to see you, my brother. Adapting. It's adaptation. This is the first time. This is the very first time where men who were part of this long process of evolution, because here's the thing, we're talking about ideology, we're talking about cultural change, we're talking about all these things. This is the first time that a group of men who have participated in this process of globalization and evolution, this is the first time that these men have taken that process and they have articulated an ideology, they have articulated a philosophy that is tied to this process of growth and development. And to do so in a way that is causing a great deal of convulsion, a great deal of angst and anxiety within the world. What's going on? Thank you, Brandon Penn, for that. Thank you, Brandon Penn. This is an SYSBM broadcast. Always remember that the first real Passport Bros were Black men who were in the military. Always remember that. And Black men have been a part of the U.S. military ever since the U.S. military was born, okay? The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, I will add the National Guards, but we know the traditional military. And we can go back to World War I, and there were Black men who fought in World War I. We're talking about the early part of the 20th century, Black men who fought in World War I, who saw the world and experienced the world. World War I, okay? They saw France, they saw Italy, they saw Germany, they saw Europe. Those Black men saw Europe in World War One. And I've said this to you guys before, and I'm going to say it to you again. If you've never seen the 1995 film Rosewood by John Singleton, the 1995 film Rosewood by John Singleton about Rosewood, Florida, and about Black prosperity in Rosewood and that town in Florida where you essentially had a kind of a Floridian version of Black Wall Street, a self-contained, self-sufficient Black society, married men and women, children, a full-blown community, a full-blown thriving community with their own code of morality, their own understanding of norms. If you watch that film Rosewood, there is a character played by Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames. He is the main character. He is the hero in that movie. Ving Rhames portrays a World War I veteran. A World War I veteran. A man who fought on the battlefield. And he plays a man who had come to this place, Rosewood, Florida, to set up shop. He was looking for a home, something that was new. And when you study this character that he played, a World War I veteran, what you understand is that when he went and he fought in World War I, it had a transformative impact on his life because he saw the world and he engaged the world. He was a part of a process of globalization. And Ving Rhames was the hero in that film. He was not afraid of white people. He was not afraid of white people. He was a Black man who had a backbone. He was a Black man who had a spirit of self-determination. This was a Black man who rode on a horse, and the name of the horse that he rode on was Booker T. He had a horse called Booker T, and Booker T represented that legendary figure, Booker T. Washington, the educator, the Wizard of Tuskegee, the man who preached Black self-reliance. So this is not new. And prefaces and passion, you are absolutely right. We can go further. We can go back even further in history. But I point to the military guys because it's closer to us in history. I point to the military guys because it's closer to us in history. We can talk about the founding of Liberia. We could talk about the founding of Liberia on the continent of Africa. Remember, Liberia was founded by Black Americans. Liberia. There was a movement among Black Americans to immigrate to Africa because of the environment in the United States was so hostile to Black people. There was a movement, and there were many Black people who moved to Africa. And they founded Liberia, which continues to stand today. It has a long history, positive history with Black Americans. Y'all share, y'all like, and y'all subscribe. Cash App, $BMI, Cash App, $BMI 3000, Cash App, $BMI 3000. So you have black men who were in World War I who traveled. You have black men who were in World War II who traveled as members of the United States military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Corey Green, what's going on? Timothy Harden, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Men's Daily Advice, I see you, my brother. Men's Daily Advice, I see you. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. How many of you guys saw the film Red Tails? The film Red Tails about the Tuskegee Airmen. If you guys have seen the film Red Tails, y'all put 2 in the chat. Put 2 in the chat if you've seen Red Tails, the film about the Tuskegee Airmen. Red Tails. Put 2 in the chat if you remember Red Tails, the movie about the Tuskegee Airmen. It wasn't long ago. Those black men who were part of the United States Air Force who fought in World War II. Those black men fought in World War II. George Lucas of Star Wars from fame. He was the man who produced that film, Red Tails. He produced it. Star Wars man, he produced that film, Red Tails. And those guys were in Italy, those guys were in Germany. I want y'all to go back and look at that film. And if you go back and look at that film, there was a passport, bro, in that film. There was a black man who met an Italian woman. If you remember, there was a black man who met an Italian woman, one of the airmen. He was played by the African, I can't think of the African's name, it was an African player, the African actor, the British Nigerian actor, I can't think of his name. It's I don't want to mess up his name. This man found him an Italian woman, fell in love with her. And the man did not want to come back to the U.S. David Awolo, thank you. Thank you, Corey Green. Thank you, Corey again. David Aiello. He found an Italian woman and fell in love with an Italian woman. Didn't want to come back to the U.S. The Tuskegee, Red Tails. The movie was called Red Tails, about the Tuskegee Airmen. Those are your passport bros. Those are your passport bros. And what you got to understand that those men were in the process of globalization. And here's what's important. You can never understand politics. You can't understand the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, which happened in the 1950s, the civil rights movement, most of the major players, many of the guys who were visible and guys who were behind the scenes, a lot of those men were military men. They were military men. So you have black men who fought in World War II. They came back to the United States and they said that it's completely impossible for them to deal with Jim Crow, to deal with second-class citizenship. Because here's what was happening to those guys back in the day. Here's what was happening. You had military men who were coming back from war, and they were coming back from the Army, from the Navy, from the Marines, from the Air Force. They were going to Alabama, they were going to Georgia, and those guys were being lynched. They were being lynched. You had black men in the military. They had military uniforms on. And it drove white people crazy. They had military uniforms on and it drove Southern white people crazy. And those guys knew how to use guns. Those guys had military intelligence. Those guys were walking around. Those guys were they were the most respected men in black society, the military men. They were the most respected black men in black society at that particular time. You had the black preachers who were at the top of the food chain. And then you had the black teachers who also had status. But if you were a black man who was in the military in black society, you had major, major status. And the white people knew that these men were men that could not be easily controlled. So what did they do? They started targeting them and they started lynching them. They would lynch these military men in their uniforms. And this right here is what helped to catapult the civil rights movement, because those men said, no, I fought for this country. I put my life on the line for this country. I'm going to get everything that I'm supposed to get out of the United States. This thing called Jim Crow needs to go. We got to get Jim Crow out of here. A lot of those black preachers who were part of the civil rights movement, they were former military men. So you got World War II, you have the Korean War, you got the Korean War, you had black men who were part of the Korean War, and those black men did what men did. You have black men who, when America was being aggressive towards Japan, those black men were part of that whole process too. In every subsequent war, you have black men who were also engaged in that. These were your original, these were the main passport bros. And many of these men, they brought wives back to the United States. They married Korean women. During the Vietnam War, you had black men who were in the Vietnam War, the black men who were able to survive Vietnam, the black men who were able to come out of Vietnam without the horrors of post-traumatic distress or not being completely devastated by that experience in Vietnam. Many of those black men they brought Vietnamese wives back with them. They married women, they had Vietnamese wives. Thank you, Willa R. And you have the deacons. I'm in North Carolina. Those guys started here in North Carolina. The Deacons for Defense. You talk about Robert Williams. Robert F. Williams was a part of that. They fought. They were not into nonviolence. They were into self-defense. The Deacons for Defense, they were for self-defense. These are your passport bros right here. These are your passport bros. They didn't call themselves passport bros. They didn't have a travel ideology that they articulated. These are men who lived in their communities. They built families. They didn't have to leave. Again, some men they found wives in different places, but these men created families and they created communities. My mother's oldest brother was an army man. My mother's oldest brother was an army man. My mother's oldest brother was a career-long army man. He was born in Georgia, but he made a career in the Army, and he eventually settled in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. These guys didn't talk. They didn't need to. They didn't have the pressures that we have. Now, they dealt with anti-Black racism. They dealt with anti-Black racism, and they were able to cope with it the best way they could. They coped with it the best way they could. But they knew, here's the thing, they did not accept American racism. These men did not accept the hostile environment that is America. They didn't accept it. They were willing to die for their freedom because they put their lives on the line for this country. And they saw the world. And they experienced the world, experienced different cultures and different people, and they saw how other people in the world lived. My uncle died, Chris. My uncle, he was my mother's oldest brother. He died back in 1992. He died back in 1992. He was in the 60s. Her oldest brother. My mother had 6 brothers. He was the only one who went into the military. He was the oldest one. He was the patriarch because his father was a casualty of America. His father was. And he did an entire career in the military. And he had a family. And the military saved his life. So fast forward today, we are still dealing with a hostile environment. We're still dealing with a hostile environment as Black men. Still dealing with a hostile environment. We are still dealing with a toxic environment. I told you guys, I did a video. When I was in Gambia. When I was in Gambia back in September, I did a video on Kololi Beach. Y'all can look at it on my page. I did a video on Kololi Beach. It's about a 5-6 minute video where I pleaded with you, Black men, to get out of America. I pleaded with you. I was on the beach. And I said, you need to get out of America because America is a toxic, 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 toxic place for a Black man. It's a toxic place. It is still toxic. We've already done civil rights. Listen, guys, we've already done civil rights. We've already done the Black Power movement. We've done civil rights. We've done the Black Power movement. We've pushed this country to be more democratic, to live up to the United States Constitution. We've already done that. Black men have already done that. What more can we do? What more can Black men do? What more should Black men be expected to do? Black men have died in service of freedom in this country. Freedom that has influenced the entire world. We don't need another Martin Luther King. We don't need another Black Panther Party. We don't need any more martyrs. We don't need no social justice warriors. We don't need no Black male social justice warriors. We've already done it. This country has proven itself to be hostile. And it is incumbent of every Black man to not be limited by America and its hostile culture towards Black men. We don't have to be limited to the hostility that is the United States towards Black men. This country hates Black men. It hates us. I want you to get this in your head. This country, the United States, this country hates us. This country hates us so much that you have people who go out of their way. You have people in this country who go out of their way to erase the contributions that Black men have made in making this country a so-called bastion of democracy and freedom in the world. You have people right now who are trying to erase all the contributions. They want to erase the military history of Black men. The reason why Black men were given the right to vote, the reason why the 14th Amendment and the 13th Amendment happened, and the 15th Amendment was because Black men fought in the Civil War. Black men fought and they died in the Civil War. They fought and they died in the Civil War. That's why Abraham Lincoln pushed for those amendments to the United States Constitution, which included the right to vote. Nobody else died. Only men died in the Civil War. Only men. Women didn't die. The women did not die in the Civil War. Not as soldiers. They shed no blood. But we're dealing with the problem of evolution. We are dealing with the problem of evolution, the convulsions. We are adapting now. We are adapting. The passport, bro, is an evolutionary movement. It is an adaptation. It's a process of adaptation. You don't have to tolerate the United States. You don't have to deal with this toxic culture if you don't want to. You can become a full-blown global citizen. A full-blown global citizen of the world. Thank you, Cold Black. Thank you for that. Yes, food for the brain. You can become a full-blown global citizen, a cosmopolitan being. And you can experience the world as a Black man that completely defies and even undermines your experience as a Black man in the United States. This is why Austin Holloman lost his mind. We're going to get back to Austin. Austin Holloman went to Brazil and he went crazy. He went crazy. Austin Holloman went to Brazil and he lost his mind. And I understand why he lost his mind. Because you all know, I've been to Brazil, I've been to Rio 2 times, I've been to Rio twice. I went to Rio back to back. Shout out to BMO, Black Men's Option. Shout out to Black Men's Option. I went to Rio de Janeiro 2 times in one summer. Twice. The first time I went with BMO, the Black Man's Option, we traveled as a group. I traveled with BMO, and I spent 8 days in Rio de Janeiro at the end of May 2021. And a couple of months later, in August, I went back to Rio de Janeiro, where I spent 11 days by myself. I was there by myself, my second trip. The first trip, and I did my video, y'all saw my video. My first trip was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. It was a mind-blowing experience. It was so mind-blowing that I had to go back to make sure it was real. That's one of the reasons why I went back to Rio de Janeiro, just to test reality, to see if this thing is real, if this thing is really, what it is. That was a part of my second trip. I had to make sure that I just wasn't caught up in one experience. But I can see how Austin lost his mind. He lost his mind because he was in a completely different culture. He was in a completely different culture. It was overwhelming. He's young, 23. Come on, guys. Come on, come on. Young and 23? You're talking about a young heterosexual male? A young heterosexual male. No wife, no kids. You're in paradise. The culture is laid back. The culture is vibrant. The music is seductive. The women are seductive. The food is good. You don't feel like you are in a hostile environment. You don't feel that way when you go to a place like that. You don't feel the tensions that come with being a Black man. Yes, the women are approachable. They are approachable. They're approachable. Are they perfect? Are the women perfect? No, the women are not perfect. The women are not perfect. The women there are not perfect. All of them are not just going to fawn all over you or what have you, but they're approachable. You can have a conversation with a person. There's not a lot of tension there. You don't have this hatred of men. And that's the key thing. That feminist who did that hit piece on Austin, she's a minority. She's a minority. She was spewing hatred towards him. But she don't represent everybody. You're talking about a big country, over 200 some million people versus one person. So I see how he lost his mind. He lost his mind because he's young. He was young. He got caught up in it. And that's what happens when you're young. You're caught up in it. Some of you guys know what time it is. But that had to happen to him. He had to grow. He had to develop. He was testing the water. This is evolution. Evolution. You are in a new environment. This is the part of evolution. You have left one environment. Here's the thing, guys. You have left one environment. You've traveled 8 hours. You've traveled close to 9 hours or whatever from the United States to South America. You land. The language is not native to you. The terrain is not native to you. The culture is not native to you. There's so much that is there that is not native to you. You're going to get inside an environment like that. You're not going to master it. I'll put it like that. You're not going to master, in one instance, an environment that is not native to what you've been used to. And what we've seen with him was the fact that he didn't master the environment. And that's okay. He engaged in a process of trial and error, a process of trial and error, a human process. It's almost like being a scientist. You experiment, you got to experiment. So he heard all these, so he watched all these videos, he talked to all these people who had traveled to Brazil, he did all that stuff. And he had to see it for himself, and he had to test the waters for himself, and he lost his mind in the process, and he made some mistakes. That's a natural part of the evolutionary process. Fortunately, the mistakes did not ultimately cost him his life. Okay? There are some mistakes that you can afford to make, and then there are other mistakes that you can't afford to make. But we're going to blame it on youth, the foolishness of youth. But what happened with Austin was natural. But what's the point? Evolution is a very difficult process. He's learned great lessons. Evolution is a very difficult process. Evolution is a part of, its trial and error is a part of the process of evolution. Now, we got to go deeper. We got to go deeper. We got to go much deeper, guys. The world has to adapt. Now that the passport ideology is in the world, the passport ideology is no longer something that's hidden. It is no longer a hidden jewel. Passport ideology is no longer a hidden jewel. The passport bros are no longer hidden jewels. We're not hidden jewels. The guys before, they were anonymous. They were anonymous, and we still have men who are anonymous. And we're going to continue to have men who remain anonymous. They're going to remain anonymous. We're going to always have men who are going to be anonymous travelers, anonymous propagators of travel ideology. But now that the world has encountered travel ideology in some of its most basic forms, y'all share, y'all like and subscribe. Get the likes up, y'all get the likes up. Hit that Cash App, $BMI 3000, Cash App, $BMI 3000. Y'all hit the super chat and what have you. We're talking about the evolution of passport bros. Now the world has to contend, the world has to deal with this evolutionary thing that is passport bros. And as we see, guys, as we see that the world is having a very hard time dealing with passport bros, and we see this with this situation with our brother, Austin Holloman. Because the world doesn't quite know how to process passport bros. The society, the media, social media, the people who are hating on passport bros, they don't understand it. They don't understand it. Y'all put three in the chat. Y'all put three in the chat if y'all still with me. They don't understand it. If you're still with me, you're still here, put three in the chat. This is the Man Professor broadcast. We are talking about the evolution of passport bros, the evolution of passport bros. They don't understand it. Black men who travel understand it. Black men who are not passport bros, they understand it. White men who travel, they understand it. Latino men who travel, they understand it. Asian men who travel, any man on the planet who travels understands this ideology. But you have people who are not travelers. You have people for whom traveling is a foreign concept. You have people for whom this type of ideology is blasphemy. Thank you guys, thank you. It is blasphemous. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with the ideas that we are articulating. When we say that we are migrating, when we talk about the possibility of retiring in a different country, when we talk about setting up businesses in different countries, when we talk about engaging other human beings and engaging in a cultural exchange in different countries, when we talk about engaging in reproduction, and here's the big thing, we're talking about reproduction. We're talking about biological reproduction. When we talk about biological reproduction, mating, marriage, and all of that, creating families. When we talk about basic human interactions with the opposite sex, which includes sex, if you're heterosexual, if you are a heterosexual and you have heterosexual desires, if you go to another part of the world and you meet the opposite sex, and the opposite sex also has heterosexual desires, and you have mutual desires between the two of you, you don't have to be married. Something is going to happen. It is inevitable. That's what human beings do. Human beings have sex. Human beings mate. Human beings marry. Human beings engage in all sorts of heterosexual activity. But we are seen as heretics. We are seen as strange human beings. Now, I want to highlight something, guys. I want y'all to check out this article. I'm not going to go through too much of it, but yeah, this is better right here. And this is what we're dealing with right now in evolution. This is what we're dealing with in terms of the evolution of the passport bros ideology, travel ideology. The passport bros is best to be understood as an ideology. It's an ideology. It's a philosophy. It's an ideology. It's a philosophy. That's what passport bros is. But here's the thing. Here's a difficult process of evolution. When you don't understand something, when you don't completely understand something, and this is what's happening right now, when you don't understand a particular evolutionary process, you go into fright mode, you go into fear mode. And this is what is happening right now with passport bros. Now I want y'all to look at this word right here. It's called a moral panic. It's called a moral panic. And this article talks about the evolution or rather the anatomy of a moral panic. And I'm gonna read some of this. So it says, among liberals of all kinds, classical and revisionists, it is the discipline of economics that holds the pride of place today. And y'all look at the cursor. However, there are branches of the tree of scholarship that can yield insights and help us understand threats to individual liberty and how to resist them. It says sociology provides several of these. One of the most powerful and greatly needed in these times is the notion of a moral panic. What is a moral panic? Look here. The concept of a moral panic was first explicitly formulated and given that name in a book by the British sociologist Stanley Cohen in 1972 under the title Folk, Devils, and Moral Panics, the Creation of the Mods and Rockers. The book used one particular panic over the two supposed youth cultures of the title to illustrate a more general thesis. This was that societies periodically suffer from episodes of panic and anxiety of a particular kind. Look at this. I'm gonna say it again. This was that societies periodically suffer from episodes of panic and anxiety of a particular kind. This is panic. This is what's happening right now at Passport Bros. There is panic, there is anxiety. In these episodes, there is a widespread fear and anxiety over a perceived threat to society and order. I hope y'all see that. In these episodes, there is a widespread fear and anxiety over a perceived threat to society. Now, some of you guys have already seen that Fox News, Fox 26 News, the Isaiah Factor. The Isaiah Factor, the Fox 26 News is supposed to be a news outlet. And I'm going to say this, what they do on their news channel is far from journalism. It is far from anything to be taken seriously under the auspices of information dissemination or the dissemination of information, knowledge production. It is a bastion of disinformation. It is a bastion, what we saw, if you saw those Fox News reports, it is a bastion of disinformation that is driven by anxiety and fear. Fox 26 put out two videos. They put out a video yesterday where they had this sorry conversation, which involved the host, who was sadly misinformed about Passport Bros, along with two other women who were also miserably misinformed about Passport Bros. And they attempted to talk authoritatively about Passport Bros and passport ideology. And what happened was nothing but anxiety and fear was communicated in the broadcast. And today they released a second video with the same host, this Isaiah guy. He interviewed Austin Holloman. They had a conversation. Austin did a good job in the conversation. But this host, the Isaiah guy, he was still captured by anxiety and fear, panic. So listen to what it says here. It says, the fear and anxiety are excessive and unreasonable, hence panic. They are unreasonable. This is because either the threat or the problem is completely imaginary, or its extent and severity is seriously exaggerated when there is a real phenomenon. The threat is often associated with a specific deviant group. Let me look at this. Let's highlight it. It says here, the threat is often associated with a specific deviant group or identity. I hope y'all see that. Dr. Thunder, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see you. They see us as a deviant group. There's anxiety. We are seen as unknown. We've deviated from something. We're deviant. What is it that we deviate from? That's the question. What are we deviating from? Let's go on. He says this is because either the threat, let me go back here. This is because either the threat or the problem is completely imaginary. Look at this. It's completely imaginary, or its extent and severity is seriously exaggerated. And that's what we're dealing with. It's imaginary. Its extent and severity is seriously exaggerated when there is a real phenomenon. Let's go further. It says again, the group may be real, a real, actually existing one that is demonized and caricatured, or it may be completely imaginary with no actual existence. Confusingly, though, in some cases, an imaginary group or subculture becomes real as people start to adopt the behavior and appearance of the invented and imaginary deviant group. So passport material, passport ideology is growing and growing and growing by leaps and bounds all over social media. And to the extent that it grows, and to the extent that the ideology infuses itself in social media, it is accompanied with heightened levels of fear. It says the final crucial element is that the supposed threat or problem and the group supposedly responsible for it are discussed and described using the language of morality. Oh, guys, the group is seen as evil or malevolent, as reflecting a moral failure. Oh my God, guys, I got to highlight this right here. I got to highlight this right here. The final crucial element is that the supposed threat or problem and the group supposedly responsible for it are discussed and described using the language of morality. The group is seen as evil or malevolent, reflecting a moral failure of some kind. Now, guys, Christopher Clipper, you see that? Absolutely right. It's a boogeyman theory. And they use morality. They use morality. So here's the deal. Passport bros have been vocal about finding wives. Passport bros have been vocal about finding girlfriends, Passport bros have been vocal about going on dates with women in countries like Brazil, countries like Thailand, countries like Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru, countries in all parts of Africa, because passport bros have been vocal about that aspect of passport ideology, even though that's not the beginning and ending of passport travel ideology. There's more to travel ideology than just dealing with women and going on dates. That's just the icing on the cake. Women are the desserts. Let me say this again. When we talk about women, we are talking about desserts. We're not talking about an entire meal. We're talking about a piece of a meal, desserts. But what happens, guys? What happens? Y'all share, y'all like, and y'all subscribe. Please share, please like, and y'all subscribe. Hit the Cash App, $BMI 3000, Cash App, $BMI 3000. I'm trying to be careful with this. I want to walk through this thing right here. Cash App, $BMI 3000. Hit the super chat. James Turner, good to see you. James Turner, good to see you, my man. Thank you for that support. Hey, man, I'm gonna keep on going, brother. Good to see you. And so here's the thing. Once they hear that we are going to these places, and they also hear that we like women, and that we want to engage the women in these other places, what automatically happens is that they begin to make bizarre and negative associations between us and the women, and they began to attach a decadent, deviant morality on us. So what are they saying? It's, oh, you are going over there to engage in, here's the thing, and he was the problem with that fox. This is how irresponsible. Here's the thing, a moral panic, this is irrational. These are the actions of an irrational group of people who are driven by fear and anxiety, and they say irrational things. So they're saying, oh, you're going over there to engage in human trafficking. They're going over there to engage in human trafficking. You're going over there to be a predator. That's the language. You're going over there to be a human trafficker. You're going over there to be a predator. You're going over there as a colonizer. You're going over there. This is what Ribeiro said. This is what woman said. You're going over there to be a colonizer. That you're going to colonize these women the way the Spaniards colonized women, the way the Portuguese colonized women, the way the French colonized women, the way the British colonized women, the way the Dutch colonized women, the way all the so-called European powers during the age of conquest colonized. They make all of these bizarre associations. They don't think about it. Here's the thing. They don't think about the language that they use. When they say human trafficking, they're calling you a human trafficker. You have to push them. You have to ask them a question. And Austin, I hope Austin is listening. The next time someone puts that epithet of human trafficker on you, I want you to ask them people, what do you mean by human trafficking? When they ask you, when they say this to you, Austin, if you do more interviews, Austin, I'm speaking to you directly, Austin. If you do more interviews, thank you, James Turner. If you do more interviews, Austin, you make them clarify whatever statements and claims that they're making. You make them clarify. You make them give you some definitions. Do you know what human trafficking is? Do you know what a human trafficker is? What does the United Nations say about human trafficking? When they start talking about you as a sex tourist, and that's the other thing. They say, oh, you're going over there to be a sex tourist. You're going over there to be a sex tourist. You ask them to clarify, what do you mean by sex tourism? What is your definition? What do you mean by sex tourism? What is a sex tourist? So what you do is you force them to give you some definitions. You force them to give you some descriptions. Give you some descriptions of a sex tourist, or what sex tourism is, and the phenomenon of sex tourism. Thank you, Willa. We're going to talk about Jack Johnson. That's right. Thank you, Willa R. 3R. They did the same thing with Jack Johnson and his wife right before the passage of the Mann Act. Absolutely, they did that. What do you mean by sex tourism? And then they start talking about prostitution. Prostitution, okay, clarify. When you say prostitution, what do you have in mind? What are you talking about? Are you talking about consensual? Are you talking about a consensual economic interaction between two adults? Are you talking about a consensual economic exchange between two adults? Or are you talking about something else? Two consenting adults? When you talk about prostitution, are you talking about prostitution that is legal? Are you talking about legal prostitution? Or are you talking about criminalized prostitution? Are you making distinctions between legal prostitution and criminalized prostitution? When you talk about prostitution, do you understand how prostitution works across the world? Do you have knowledge of where prostitution is legal and where it is not legal? Do you know the numbers of countries on the planet where prostitution is criminalized? Do you know the numbers of countries on the planet where prostitution is not criminalized? So you have to force these people. You have to force these people to clarify what they're talking about. And when you talk about prostitution, are you just talking about, here's the thing, guys. Thank you, Willa R. When you talk about prostitution, here's the other thing, guys. When you talk about prostitution, are you just talking about prostitution between a man and a woman, a man engaging in an economic exchange, a man being a buyer and a woman being a seller? Are you just talking about that type of prostitution? Or are you talking about other forms of prostitution? Are you talking about the prostitution that involves a woman? Are you talking about women who are buyers? Are you talking about women who are purchasing sex? Women. Are you talking about women who purchase sex from men? Women who pay men for sex? Are you talking about that? Are you including it? In your definition of prostitution, are you including women who pay men for sex? And let's even go forward. When you talk about prostitution, are you talking about men paying who pay other men for sex? Are you talking about prostitution that involves homosexuality? Are you talking about that? Are you talking about prostitution that involves same gender, where there's an economic exchange between two consenting males who have sex with each other for money? Are you talking about that? Are you talking about the transgenders? Are you talking about transgender prostitution? Are you talking about lesbians who have sex with other women for money? Are you talking about lesbianism? Are you talking about lesbians who are buying sex from other women? So when you talk about prostitution, you need clarity. What type of prostitution are you talking about? Who's a part of the definition of prostitution? Oh, and here's the thing. Are you saying that there's something immoral about prostitution? If prostitution is not criminal, if it's not criminalized, if it's between two consenting adults, are you saying that there's a moral problem with prostitution? That there's something moral involved there? And here's the question: what type of moral problem are you talking about? Because you got prostitution, you have men who are purchasing sex from women, you have women who are purchasing sex from men, you have men who are purchasing sex from other men, you have women who are purchasing sex from other women, you have people who are purchasing sex from transgendered individuals. So what is the moral problem that you have? What's the morality of it? So what is the morality of females, women? You know, what's the moral issue you got? Are we talking about people who are unmarried? Single people? People who don't have wives, don't have husbands, who don't have girlfriends? What are we talking about? Are we talking about married people? We're talking about issues of infidelity? What are we talking about? Can they tell you? See, and that's the thing. You have to push them. Austin Holloman, you have to push them on clarifying what it is that they're talking about. And when you say predator, here's the other thing. When you say predator, is the predator is it just male specific? If you're saying that people are predators, is it just male specific? Are you just saying that that the only part of the human species that engage in predatory behavior is the male part? Are you mean to tell me that only men? Are you mean to tell me that only men are predatory? Are you saying that women cannot be predators? Do you mean to tell me that women cannot be predatory? You mean that women cannot be predatory? So when I went to Jamaica, for the first time, back in 2003, I went for my 30th birthday to Jamaica. I went to Ocho Rios. I was in Jamaica. I went to Jamaica in 2003 for my 30th birthday. I had just started my teaching. I was on the cusp of beginning my teaching career as a professor. 8 Rivers in Jamaica. And as soon as I got off the bus from the airport to my resort, as soon as I got off the bus, I was inundated. I was harassed by women, prostitutes. As soon as I got to my resort, I had prostitutes pushing up on me in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. And I had prostitutes damn near trying to follow me to my hotel room because they wanted to work. So you telling me when you talk about predation, were they being predatory? I didn't go to Jamaica to deal with no prostitutes. I went there to have some fun. I traveled to Jamaica by myself. And I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm bombarded. So when you talk about predation, are you being gender inclusive? They talk about inclusion. Are you being gender inclusive when you talk about predation? Are you saying that the predatory behavior is not just exclusive to men? That predatory behavior also includes women. So what about when I'm sitting? When I'm sitting in the bar? When I'm sitting in the bar and I'm having a drink, I'm sitting in the bar and I'm having a drink, and the bartender, who happens to be a woman, I'm having a conversation with her, and the bartender is asking me all these questions about my personal life and what I do as a profession, and am I married? And the bartender wants to get together. The bartender, is interested in America, and the bartender wants to have some drinks after the bartender's shift is over. She's pushing up on me. She wasn't no, at least as far as I could tell, she was just a bartender, but that this woman, she was very, very aggressive. She was a pygmy. She was a pygmy. She was a pygmy. She said, pygmy, pygmy, pygmy. So what do you mean by predation? What is a predator? What is a predator? Who is a predator? The women on Instagram. Are the women on Instagram, are they predators? Are those women on Instagram predators? Are the women on Tinder? Are the women on Tinder predators? Tinder is international. Tinder is all over the world, brother. When you travel, there is Tinder all over the world. Are the women on Tinder predators? When they walk up to you on the street and they holler at you, they want to talk to you, they walk up to you and stuff, are they predators? So you have to, Austin, you need some clarity. The next time you do an interview, Austin, you need to push these people, because these people say things, they use language, they use terms that they're unfamiliar with. They're talking about issues that they don't have expertise knowledge on, and they are fomenting fear, anxiety. They are saying that you're a threat. So it goes right here. So there is a recurring social phenomenon in which many people are gripped by fear that social order is threatened by some behavior or practice that is both harmful and immoral or motivated by ill will. The state of panic exists despite there no being real foundation for it. So Austin Holloman is the object of a panic But there is no foundation. There's no foundation for this so-called panic that has been connected to him. What is the foundation? What is the root? What's the foundation? Because he said that it's easier talking to Brazilian women than it is talking to American women. That's the basis of a fear and threat and frightening and fright. How, though, does this panic arise? Moral panics almost all have the same features and trajectory. They start with a particular episode or event, often real, but sometimes completely imaginary. The supposed event is either invented, look at this, is either invented or involves some misinterpretation of something quite different. Uh-oh, here we go. Look at this. The supposed event is either invented or involves a misinterpretation of something quite different. The initial event receives very wide coverage and is widely discussed. The initial event receives very wide coverage and is widely discussed. This is Austin. This right here, guys, is explaining this passport bro situation to a T right here. It explains this situation. And what I'm saying to you guys is that these panics emerge whenever there are cataclysmic shifts in a culture. They occur when there are cataclysmic shifts, when there are evolutionary changes that happen in a culture, when people don't quite grasp what is happening. When you have a group, so the group is called deviant. They call the group deviant because the group is doing something that is outside the norm. They're doing something outside the norm. The group could be doing something that's countercultural. It could be countercultural in a way that is harmful. It could be countercultural in a way that is not harmful, that is positive, that has some type of positive outcome. But either way, if you're perceived as doing something counterculture and it deviates from some norm, you're going to be seen as a deviant. So I'm going to give you an example. So homosexuality. I'm going to give you an example. Homosexuality. Homosexuality. I'm old enough. I am old enough to remember when AIDS first was identified as a major problem in the world. I remember when AIDS, in the mid to late 80s, I remember when AIDS, I'm close to 50 years old, so I remember when AIDS began rocking the world. And they had all kind of theories about AIDS and where AIDS come from and stuff like that. But for the most part, when AIDS was first identified, it was associated with homosexuals. And AIDS happened to hit the homosexual world more than a decade after the gays and lesbians, particularly the gay men, had created their gay liberation movement. So before AIDS had been identified, the gays, the white gays in particular, in San Francisco and in New York City, they had their own liberation movements where they were saying that they no longer wanted to be seen as quote unquote criminals and deviants. Because remember, homosexuality at one time, unlike it is today, homosexuality was seen as something that was deviant. And that men who engaged in homosexual behavior was seen as abnormal. And that homosexuality at one time was classified as a psychological disorder. And homosexuality at one time was criminalized. And there was a moral panic when those gays, before AIDS hit, when those gays started to push to be more public, to come out the closet so that they can be gay without any social stigma, they were seen as deviants. And there was a panic about that. And there was a panic around homosexuals coming out of the closet and men being with each other. But then the panic got worse. Here's the thing, the moral panic got worse once AIDS came on the scene. Once AIDS came on the scene, the fear and the anxiety got worse. And so the gay people had to deal with heightened levels of stigma. But what did AIDS do? AIDS, ironically, here's the thing, AIDS, ironically, it accelerated the gay liberation movement. So the homosexuals lost people in AIDS, but they started being activists around AIDS. And what happened was AIDS became a political tool for them to be out the closet. And then after the country seemingly, at least the white gays, once they got some control, once we identified HIV and got some control of HIV, they moved away from AIDS. The gays and lesbians, the white gays in particular, they moved away from AIDS. Because they really, once they learned that you have to wear condoms, AIDS cases started going down among the white gays. And then they shifted. They said, okay, we just don't want to talk about AIDS anymore. We want to talk about something else. And then they start talking about gay marriage. And the gays and lesbians, remember now, they've been talking about gay marriage longer. They talked about, if you look at how long they've been talking about gay marriage, they talked about gay marriage longer than they talked about AIDS. But there was a moral panic around them. Everybody was fearful of homosexuals. Fast forward today, everything has been reversed in the West. Fast forward today, in Rio de Janeiro, you got the rainbow flag. They got the rainbow flag in Rio. They got the rainbow flag. And they got the rainbow flag in every Western nation. Damn near every Western country on the planet is ride or die for the LGBTQ. They ride or die for them. They ride or die for LGBTQ. But that did not happen without them going through all the convulsions, them challenging homophobia and all that kind of stuff. So what does it got to do with passport bros? What does it got to do with passport bros? The same way that homosexuals were stigmatized, I want y'all to get this, The same way, what's going on, Rico? Good to see you, man. Good to see you, man. The same way that homosexuals were stigmatized in the 1980s, the same way that they experienced all sorts of panic is not radically different from what's happening with passport bros and passport ideology. Because they were seen as sexually deviant. And they were policed. And there were anti-sodomy laws. They had them locked up and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't want to run away with that example too much. I don't want to run away with that example too much. Because the issues of black men have always been more profound as black men than sexuality issues. Because this panic that we're dealing with passport bros is historical. It's been around for a long time. Willard 3R mentioned Jack Johnson. It happened with Jack Johnson, the heavyweight boxer. Black man, heavyweight boxer. He married white women. He had a series of white wives. He even married a prostitute at one time. He married a prostitute. A white woman who was a prostitute. He married a prostitute. He married a middle-class woman. He was dealing with all kinds of white women, okay? And a law was created. A law was created called the Mann Act around prostitution that got him caught up, that was imposed upon him. Let me go back to this article. We are talking about the evolution of passport bros. So it says here, at this point, the crucial step is taken that creates a panic. Specific people, entrepreneurs as they call it, claim that the reported event is actually only one instance of something more widespread, that there is actually an epidemic, look at this, or a plague, oh my God, of this kind. Medical usage and metaphors are often used at this stage. So it is increasing in frequency to a crisis level. This starts to cause anxiety and alarm, and it leads people to a spate of reports, rumors, and accusations. These are now reported so that the impression gains ground that there is indeed a serious, unacknowledged problem or crisis. Let me do this here. I'm gonna highlight this right here. I want y'all to see this, man. We're gonna highlight this whole thing right here. This whole thing. There's so much to unpack. At this point, the crucial step is taken that creates a panic. Specific people, these are your news people right here. Here are your news people, and these are the people on TikTok and Instagram, other places. Entrepreneurs, as they are called, claim that the reported event is actually one instance of something more widespread. So they think that passport bros is a virus or a cancer, and that there is actually an epidemic or a plague of this kind. Medical language and metaphors are often used. Again, they think this is a disease, so that it's increasing frequency to a crisis level. This starts to cause anxiety and alarm, and it leads to a spate of reports. Look at this, rumors and accusations. Reports, rumors, and accusations. These are now reported so that the impression gains ground that there is indeed a serious, unacknowledged problem or a crisis. You look at that. This is what they're doing to passport ideology. Passport bros. Somehow or another, we are not a plague. We are a plague because we're spreading and growing. No, we're not a plague because we're spreading and growing. We are evolution. We are part of an evolutionary process. This is evolution. This is human evolution. And they're concerned. They're concerned. The haters of Passport Bros are concerned about it spreading. The haters of Passport Bros are concerned about the spread of travel ideology. That travel ideology is a contagion. Travel ideology is like catching the flu. Travel ideology is like coming down with COVID. And we need to do something to contain this contagion, this threat. We need a vaccine. We need to alert public health. We need to alert the authorities. This is the type of foolishness and nonsense that we have going on right now, based on rumors, based on melodrama, based on speculation, based on stuff that is not rooted in fact. Let me tell you something, man. There is so much ignorance. Watching this stuff happen with Passport Bros, it has really shone a light on the level of ignorance that exists in America. The level of ignorance. It has shown a light on the level of ignorance with respect to what traveling is. It has shown a level of ignorance. It has shown the light of the level of ignorance that people have of other countries. It exposes the ignorance that people have of laws. It exposes ignorance that people have of all sorts of ideas. It exposes ignorance. And when you watch that Fox 24, those videos from Fox 24, what you just see is abominable ignorance, just ignorance. Ignorance. It is obvious. I'm going to tell you guys, you got these people who watch, they've watched, listen. The people who use the word predator and they talk about human trafficking and they talk about prostitution and all that kind of stuff, these are people who get all their information about these so-called criminal activities from Law and Order SVU. These are people, they get all of their information from Law and Order. These are people who've been watching Law and Order for decades. And this is their major source of information. Or they've been watching shows on the Lifetime channel. And they've been watching some of these crime shows. And they think that these crime shows, Law and Order, they think that Lifetime are definitive sources of knowledge about things that actually happen in the world. You sit up and watch Nancy Grace. You sit up and watch Nancy Grace, and you actually think that watching Nancy Grace is giving you actual solid knowledge and information about how the world works. You are watching CSI. You're watching CSI Miami. And you think that watching CSI Miami actually gives you definitive knowledge about how the world works. So you have highly illiterate people. Salute to you, Joe. Salute to you. Thank you for that. You have highly illiterate people, people who are illiterate about laws, illiterate about geography, illiterate about travel, illiterate about culture. Austin, if you're watching, when they start using the word third world country, here's the thing, Austin Holloman, when they start talking about third world or third world countries or developing countries, I want you to ask them to clarify what you mean by third world. What you mean by third world? What you mean by third world? If you look at a group of women outside of America and say, okay, these are third world women, what you mean by that? Because I'm going to tell you, there are a whole lot of people in the so-called third world who are offended by the language of third world. They're offended when you use the language, when you say that you're from the third world and that you're a third world person. They're offended by that. Because that language, third world, has some very negative, racist, imperialist connotations. The idea of a third world, that's a racist idea. Now you can use it sometimes pragmatically, but it's not. Third world is an offensive idea. And when you suggest that every population that's classified under this term third world is poverty-stricken and destitute and just down and out, you're being highly offensive. You're being highly offensive. You're exposing your ignorance. You are exposing your ignorance of the world. When you use the language of third world, it is a racist colonial notion. So I'm telling you, these people who are in this moral panic, they are driven by ignorance. That guy, Isaiah, thank you, Jones, for that. Salute to you. What's going on, MLR, man? Salute to you. We're talking about the evolution of the passport bros, the evolution of the passport bros. When you classify an entire population as impoverished, and you've never been there, you've never met these people, and this is so hilarious. This is what's so hilarious. This is what's so hilarious. They want to pretend as though they are speaking on behalf of people that they never met. So we talk about, I talk about it. We've met women in Brazil and Africa and other places, Thailand, Colombia. And these people who've never been to these places talk as if they have expertise, knowledge about these women in these countries. They've never been there. So you're talking about brothers going to Colombia, guys going to Bogota or Medellin, and you got somebody who just hop out of nowhere in the West who takes objection to that, who calls the women over there third world. This Western woman ain't never been over there. Doesn't even speak Spanish. But she got all these, she's talking as though she's an expert on the culture, a culture she's never even experienced. Thank you, MLR. Thank you for that, my brother. All of this is produced by fear, ignorance, and mythology. This is fear, this is ignorance, and mythology. This is the moral panic. So passport bros are a small group. We are a small group. It's a small group of men. Not every black man who travels identifies himself as a passport bro. Not every black man. You don't know who's a passport bro, who's not a passport bro. But what you have with this moral panic, a small group of people who put travel ideology on the internet that stokes fear and anxiety of people who see this content. What the passport bros are doing in their mind is amplified. So let's just say there are only 10 real passport bros. Let's just pretend there are only 10 real passport bros who are traveling. If you let these people run with their narratives, passport bros actually represent over 1 million men. They will make you think that 10 people who are actually engaged in this are really, in real time, more than 1 million people. That's what this panic is all about. And I want you to know, you know, white feminists have been criticized hard, especially white feminists. White feminists have been really criticized for how they've talked about women in other countries. White feminists. They've been criticized about how they talk about women in Africa. White feminists have been criticized for how they talk about women in the Islamic world. White feminists have been criticized for how they talk about women in the Caribbean. White feminists have been criticized for how they talk about women all over the world that is not white or predominantly white. But they magnify the stuff. They magnify it. Now, I'm not going to go through all this. And I just want to show y'all. So it says that this action, it demands, they want action. So I'm not going to spend all this time on here. It says, so what happens, inevitably, there is a demand for action. There is a demand for action. Look at this. There is a demand for action that something must be done. Institutions and powerful agencies now come under intense pressure to respond, often on the basis of something must be done. This is something, and therefore we should do it. In addition, people in these agencies often support or give credence to the panic for self-interested reasons, not least because it leads to an increase in their own power. Oh my God, we're talking about the Brazilian feminists. I'm gonna read this again. This leads inevitably to demands for action, that something must be done. Institutions and powerful agencies now come under intense pressure to respond, often on the basis of something must be done. This is something, and therefore we should do it. In addition, people in these agencies often support or give credence to the panic for self-interested reasons, not least because it leads to an increase in their own power, status, or budget. So you see what's going on, guys? This is what the feminist does. This is what the moral panic does. And it's not just the feminists, it's the other people. They say that this is a crisis. They say this is an epidemic. Something needs to be done. We need to contain it. We need to get rid of it. We need to expunge it. And the people who call, here's the thing, and the people who call for its removal, they have interest. They tend to be self-serving. They tend to want to get something out of the removal process. By identifying the problem and the panic, it does something. It gives them notoriety, i.e. clout. It gives them clout. It gives them clout. It gives them notoriety. It boosts their profile. And the clout often comes with a demand for money or resources so that they can continue their advocacy, so they can continue to put gasoline on this fire that is a panic. Roguish the Bill Monger, what's going on? What's going on? So these people are clout chasing, they are out for it. This is what they do with a moral panic. There are people, in other words, there are people who benefit from this. This is called panic capitalism. This is panic capitalism. This is fear capitalism. You create a fear, you create a contagion, you create a crisis, you create a problem that doesn't actually exist, and you monetize the problem. You profit from the problem. You use the problem to benefit your own self-interest. So let's call these guys sex traffickers. Let's call these guys sex traffickers. Let's call these guys human traffickers. Let's put the criminal label on them. Let's amplify it. Let's make it more than what it is. And let's create a nonprofit organization, or we're a part of a nonprofit organization that deals with so-called victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking. And we need more budget to fight this stuff. We need more money in our budget to fight this stuff. Because this is an epidemic. And you got a whole bunch of people who are being victims, and they're victimized by this. Now, to be sure, human trafficking is real. Human trafficking is real. Human trafficking is a problem all across the world. It's a real thing. But it is intellectually lazy. Here's the thing. It is intellectually lazy and intellectually irresponsible and downright self-serving if every male interaction, every heterosexual interaction is classified under the umbrella of human trafficking. That travel is classified under the umbrella. It is intellectually lazy and it is irresponsible. It is irresponsible. And these people are irresponsible. But what are we doing right now? We are talking about evolution. And this is a part of the evolutionary process. that evolution comes with some difficulties, guys. Evolution comes with difficulty. In other words, it goes with the territory. It goes with the territory. And eventually, those who have difficulty with this are going to have to come to terms with it. And the reason why they're going to have to come to terms with it because travel ideology is not going anywhere. Travel ideology is here to stay. Travel ideology is not going anywhere. Passport Bros is not going anywhere. You can't just take one person and think that you can demonize one person, and because you demonize one person and plaster the person's face and name all over the internet, that somehow or another, that's going to stop the flow of this ideology. You can't kill it. You can't kill an ideology. You can't kill an idea. But this is what happens. Now, there are a whole bunch of examples, guys, about moral panics. There are a whole bunch of examples in terms of moral panics. I'm not going to go into it. The war on drugs was a moral panic. There are, moral panics associated with crime. There are moral panics associated with immigration. There are all kinds of moral panics that happen in the world. All kinds of moral panics. This passport bro thing, guys, is a product of evolution. We're evolving. And evolution is about growth. And there's pain. There is pain that comes with growth. Some of you guys work out. You guys work out. Some of you guys go to the gym and lift weights. You know what it was like. Some of you guys are ex-athletes. You used to hit the gym, hit them weights when you were younger. Still do now. If you want to be a bodybuilder, if you want to have a buff body, if you want to have a super fit body, if you want to look a certain way, if you want those muscles to look a certain way, you have to be willing to go through a lot of pain. You got to go through the pain in order to transform your body so that your body will become something that it has never been before. You know the old adage, no pain, no gain. And that's a part of the regular process of evolution. There is pain. And we are adapting, readapting. The cultures haven't adapted. Passport travel ideology is Black men pushing this evolutionary process. They say, and here's the thing, they keep talking about us shaming women and shaming Western women and talking about Western women. They keep talking about us talking about Western women, and they keep saying that we need to shut up and not talk about Western women, but say, no, this is a part of the evolutionary process. Because the part of the evolutionary process is about detoxing yourself from the West. So yes, Austin was down there in Rio, and he's making comparisons between the West and Brazil. He's making necessary anthropological, cultural comparisons. That's what you do. And you make judgments. You make judgments on what's good and what's not good. And you ask yourself, is it time for you to adapt, to readjust to a different type of climate and environment, one that is less toxic? And when you make the decision to adapt to new environments, to new climates, to new cultures, then what that means is that you have to detox. That means that you have to discard and let go of those bad ideas, those bad cultural practices that will impede you or inhibit you from successfully navigating a new environment. So the critics of Passport Bros don't understand evolution. The Black critics in particular, the Black critics of Passport Bros do not understand evolution. They don't understand SYSBM. SYSBM is an evolutionary adaptation to a hostile American environment. And that evolution involves discarding cultural practices and cultural habits, cultural beliefs that are no longer beneficial to you. So when you have SYSBM slash Passport Bros and Passport Bro ideology saying, you know what, the single mother phenomenon, the single mother-led Black community, the culture, the matriarchal gynocentric culture is not a culture that is conducive to a different, for existence in a different environment. That this culture has not adapted, it has not changed with all the processes of globalization, knowledge, information, and what have you. It is a culture that refuses to adapt and change. But because the culture refuses to adapt and change does not mean that members, individual members within the culture, or groups, subsets of groups within the culture, it does not mean that they cannot change. If a man wants a wife, if he wants a traditional family, if he wants a traditional family, he has to be in a culture that is conducive to having a traditional family. If he wants to be the head of his household, he has to be in an environment and a culture that is conducive to him being the head of his household. That means that you must abandon or you must sever your ties with that culture. And it doesn't mean that you hate the people. It doesn't mean that you're no longer somehow, you're just completely disconnected from them. It means that the culture that you came from, which is not favorable to traditional families, that culture must be left behind. You don't bring that with you into a new environment. That's evolution. That's what it's all about. It's about evolution. Thank you, Mark Hope. And it's also social engineering, because you are social engineering your life now. You are socially engineering. You are socially engineering your life simultaneously with the process of globalization. You are socially engineering your life. So when you say that you're not going to be restricted, so the Black American population, here's the deal, guys. There are roughly 40 million Black Americans in this country. There might be a little bit more based on our last census. Thank you, Armand. Thank you, P. Armand, for that cash app. Thank you, P. Armand, for that cash app. You have roughly 40 million Black Americans, and we're talking about Black Americans, not just Black people, but Black Americans in the United States. 7% of the population is Black and female, 7%. 6% of that population is Black and male. So you got a little over 21 million Black women in comparison to maybe 20 some odd million Black men. This is the logic now. 21 some odd million Black American women versus 20 some million Black men. I've said this before. On the continent of Africa, you have over 1.3 billion people on the continent of Africa. You have more than 1.3 billion people on the continent of Africa. And over half of that 1.3 billion population is female. I want you to get this. How is it that you can restrict yourself? Or how is it that you could compare in an even way 21 some odd million Black American women in North America over against more than 500 million Black women or Black females on the continent of Africa? The gene pool, the DNA, the gene pool, the genetic diversity in Africa is richer than it is in North America. Why would you limit your DNA? Why would you limit your reproductive survival to this small population, a small population that is right now anti-biological, anti-father, anti-family, anti-marriage, anti-man? You have a culture that is anti-man, anti-father, anti-husband, anti-relationship, anti-biology, reproduction. I'm talking about North America. Evolution says if you want your genetic material to be perpetuated, that is biological evolution, reproduction, but there's also cultural evolution. If you want to be in an environment that is more conducive to your own thrival as a human being, your mental health, your well-being, your happiness, and other things, then what you do is, at an evolutionary adaptation level, you adapt to the new environment. Thank you, Scott Haywood. No one ever suggested women become what the men say they want. Instead, they try to convince men to accept less than. Yes. And this is counter-evolutionary, Scott Haywood. This is counter evolutionary. This is counter. Rick Scorpio's in the house. This is counterproductive. If you have a population that is anti-everything, especially anti-male, you cannot exist. There is no way for you to. There's no way for you to flourish. So this is about evolution, adaptation. If I want to get married, no, I'm not going to marry in America. I'm going to marry outside of America. If I want a black woman, if I want to marry a black woman and I want to have children with a black woman, I'm going to go to Africa and get married to a black woman and have children with a black woman and create a family with a black woman on the continent of Africa. And this is my imperative. This is my biological and cultural evolutionary imperative. This is what we mean by the evolution of passport bros. Evolution. It's about cultural survival. It's about economic survival. It's about genetic survival. It's about continuation. Thank you, Dr. Thunder. Good to see you, Rick Scorpio. There's a woman from Uganda. I was watching a video from two black women. There's a black woman from Uganda. She has a YouTube channel. I can't think of her name now. I'm going to have to post it on my community tab. I was watching it last week. I was watching a video from a black woman in Uganda. And she was live streaming. And this is a black woman from Uganda who wants to have ties with black Americans. She's in East Africa. And her channel is about creating links between East Africa in particular and the continent of Africa in general with black Americans. And in this video, this is part of her platform, she's telling black Americans to come to Uganda. She's a black woman from Uganda, young. She's maybe 25, 26, very articulate, very smart, young. And she's doing a live stream with her friend. And she's just begging, not begging, but she's just telling black Americans, you need to come to Africa. You need to come to Uganda. Uganda is your home. You need to come here. And you need to reconnect with Africa. And you need to intermarry with us. And this was the thing. She said this. I want y'all to get this, guys. I want you to get this. This young black woman from Uganda, she said this in her video. I'm going to have to post this on my community tab. I don't have it here now. She said, you black Americans need to come here and intermarry with us. We need to keep this thing, we need to keep this black African thing going. You need to intermarry with us. We need intermarriage between East Africans, Ugandans, and African Americans. I heard her say that. She said this in her live stream. We need to come together. We need to marry. She said, we need to marry each other. And what she's signaling, what she's pointing to is evolution. It's evolution. It's evolution. She's talking about procreation, production, reproduction, life. We are dealing with a culture, Black men. We are dealing with a culture that is anti-life. It is anti-life right here in the United States, especially as it relates to Black American men. It is anti-life. It is anti-Black man. It is anti-life. It is anti-life, especially as it's related to anything associated with the capacities, the cultural, intellectual, and reproductive capacities of a Black man. It is anti-life. It is anti-evolution. And that's why 70% of this Black American culture is stuck in where it is right now. No one wants to talk about the fact that you have a damn near permanent situation right now where the vast majority of Black children will, in the foreseeable future, be stuck in a matriarchy and the limitations of this matriarchy. They're going to be stuck there. And the males are going to be stuck there. And the males have to deal with the poverty and the prisons and the degradation that comes from growing up in a matriarchy. And only some of them will escape. Only a handful of Black males will escape the matriarchy as it exists. Those who are born in, they are born into a cultural prison. And only a few will escape this cultural prison. This is what we're dealing with. Anyway, guys, I didn't mean to go this long. I had so many other things I want to talk about. But I've been here for 3 hours, man. I want to say, guys, travel ideology is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And we're dealing, again, this is the theme of this video. We are dealing with an evolutionary process. And it is what it is. It makes people uncomfortable. It creates anxiety. It creates fear. It will have people target passport bros. But that's just a part of the evolutionary process. There's no telling where Austin Holloman is going to be when he's 30 years old, when he's 35 years old. Can you imagine if Austin Holloman continues doing what he's doing and he gets smarter? Here's the thing, he's going to get smarter now. He's going to get smarter. He's going to adapt. He's already adapted. He left Brazil. He went to Thailand. He's made the adjustments. He's adapting. He's evolving. He's evolving and adapting. He's having to change up. He's fluid. He's an organism. He's an organism. Now just imagine what this 23-year-old adaptive, cultural, biological organism is going to look like when he's 33 years old. If he is careful, he plays his cards right, he's not married, he doesn't have any children. Oh my God, this is the best time. This is the best time for him. Can you imagine what Kevin Samuels would be saying right now about this young man? Can you imagine what Kevin Samuels would be saying? if he were alive? Because remember, when Kevin Samuels spoke to men, Kevin Samuels always talked about young guys grinding it, young guys putting their nose to the ground, young guys who are not married, who don't have any kids. He was saying that between the ages of 30 and 35, you have a lot of time and opportunity to make mistakes. That's what Kevin was constantly saying. And it's not just true because Kevin Samuels said it, it's just a human truth. If you don't have any kids, if you're not married, you don't have any debts, when you're in your 20s, you have room to make mistakes. You have room. You have room to grow. You have room to experiment. He is going through an experimental evolutionary process. He is a scientist. This is a scientific process. But just imagine if he continues to grow and get stronger and wiser, where he's going to be when he is 33 years old. Imagine where he's going to be when he's 40. Just imagine how much of the world he would have seen by the time he reaches 33. What do you think? Well, how do you think that impacts a human being? Can you imagine how that impacts a human being? That you are comfortable in the world and that you have absorbed all of the cultures and you've absorbed language, you've engaged in all sorts of human interactions. You've been in all sorts of situations. Do you know what that does to a person? That's better. Man, you can't get that. Let me tell you something. You can't get that in college. The education that Austin Holloman is receiving right now, you can't get that in college. The education that Austin Holloman is receiving right now, you can't get this, you can't get the type of education that he's getting, you can't get it in college, you can't get it in graduate school. It is completely impossible. He is being educated by the world. He is being educated by the raw materials of the world. And that beats a college degree. A college degree cannot compete with that. A college degree, a graduate degree, a PhD cannot compete with a raw experience of the entire world. That's education. That's true. He's having a true education. This is true education in its truest and its fullest sense. This is education. And this is evolution. And again, like I say, this is the type of education you cannot get this in a college classroom. You just can't. You can't get it in law school. You can't get it in graduate. You just can't. The education that you get through actually traveling, you can't get anywhere other than traveling. Thank you, Hero, the Apocalypse. Just imagine where he's going to be when he's 33. What I like about him, he's a maverick. He's a young maverick. He is a young maverick. He is a young renegade. He has the renegade spirit. He has the maverick spirit. Now, of course, he has some recklessness. He's got to get rid of some of that reckless stuff, and that comes through maturity. You get rid of some of the recklessness. That comes through maturity, but you get rid of some of that, or you put it under control. You got to harness it. But that comes with time and growth. But it's a part of the evolutionary process. And here's the thing, you can't control a man. I'm telling you, you can't control a man's mind. You cannot control a man's mind who is involved in the type of education that he's involved in right now. You can't control him. You can't control him. And that's one of the fear. Here's the thing, that's the fear. That's a part of the fear. That's a part of the panic. That's the part of the panic. The panic. These people don't like, they've never liked black men going over to Brazil. They've never liked black men going over to Brazil. This has been going on for decades. They've never liked black men going over to Brazil because of what these black men would see and encounter in Brazil and what that experience would do for their mindsets, their consciousness, and how it would change them and how it would make them different human beings. That's the fear. And it will put those black men in a position where they cannot be controlled. You can't be controlled by the gynocratic government. You cannot be controlled by gynocratic communities. You cannot be controlled by gynocratic activists or academics or what have you. You cannot be controlled. That's the fear. And you're not asking for permission. You're not asking for permission to travel. You're not asking for permission if you could talk to other people and meet other people and do different things. That's the fear. You see. So the convulsions that we're dealing with, these growing pains, is that travel ideology, SYSBM, Save Yourself Black Men, passport bros, is basically telling the world, especially the black world, that we are moving and acting apart from you, independent. That the values, cultures that dominate the black world are not going to dictate how we move in the world. And especially as those values, attitudes, and norms have been connected to a history of Jim Crow, a history of slavery, and a history of black people being restricted in their movement, a history of black people being restricted in their thinking, a history of black people being restricted in so many ways, black people being so restricted that being restricted is a norm among black people, that black people are used to being restricted. That being restricted as a black person is supposed to be that way all the time, every day, for every generation. And once you break out of that, then there's a moral panic. There is a moral panic. When it is known that no one is going to tell you who you can sleep with. Thank you, Heru. No one is going to tell you who you can sleep with. Thank you, Kanadaya. Thank you for that super sticker. No one can tell you who you can sleep with, who not to sleep with. No one can give you orders on how to demonstrate sexual agency. We don't care about colorism. We don't care about the color hierarchy, light skin, dark skin, all that kind of stuff. We don't care how you think about colorism. We don't care about fatness and bodies, and we don't care about body positivity. We don't care about that. We don't care about the sexual fluidity and all that kind of stuff. And we don't care. That's not going to control us. We don't care about, six-figure standards and 666, as people say. We just it doesn't, it doesn't control us. And we don't care about you voting over and over again, voting over and over again, or voting over and over again for a Democratic Party that treats Black Americans like children. We don't care about that. The evolutionary impulse says that we have a different agenda for our survival. Yes, because they need to control us. Yeah, you need the brain trust. The elites are terrified. Top 10%. You need the brain trust. Well, listen, brothers, I've got 3 hours in, man. I had to come out here, man. I had to come out here, guys, and talk about the evolution of Passport Bros, because here's the thing. This thing is much bigger. Austin Holloman is just an avatar. He's a symbol. He's at the basic. He's at the ground floor of evolution. He's at the ground floor. And what happened with him was natural. It's a natural process. And what is happening right now with the whole enterprise of Passport Bros, SYSBM, it's a natural process. We are renegades. We are mavericks. We are mavericks. We are mavericks. We are renegades. We are articulating an ideology that people are not accustomed to. The ideology of Passport Bros, travel ideology, is an ideology that the world is not accustomed to. They've never heard this message before. Black men, the vast majority of Black men are not accustomed to Passport Bros. They've never been challenged to think globally in the way in which Passport Bros challenge Black men to think globally. And to also think in evolutionary terms. This is why you have some pushback. This is why that guy, that Black man on Fox 26 in Houston, that Black man, Uncle Ruckus, I'm gonna call him Uncle Ruckus on Fox 26 in Houston. That's why when he was talking to Austin Holloman, y'all go back and y'all review that interview that he did. He was talking to Austin as though Austin committed some heinous crime, as though Austin was some terrorist, and that he was some interrogator. This is the guy, and he was very ignorant. This guy on Houston 26, very ignorant, full of ignorance. He's like he's some prosecutor with some type of authority, like he with the federal government, like he with the CIA. And that's why I said, Austin, if you're watching this, you don't have to answer every question. He's out there because he has to deal with the image of himself in the world. So he has to engage in this PR. But Passport Bros, thanks again, Kanadaya. You don't have to apologize and explain yourself to anybody. You don't have to. You don't have to get into any arguments with anybody over Passport Bro SYSBM travel ideology, because it's not up for debate. This is not up for debate. But if you're in a situation like Austin Holloman, and you have individuals or you have entities or you have groups of people who are deliberately trying to destroy your name, when you have people who are out there who are deliberately misrepresenting you in the public, people who are liable to be sued in a court of law, when you have that type of stuff going on, when you have people who are talking about you in ways that can jeopardize your livelihood and jeopardize your life, yes, you need to say something. You need to do something. If you're not going to get a lawyer, you respond. But here's the thing. Don't allow yourself to be interrogated. Here's the thing. Do not allow yourself to be interrogated like you were some terrorist. Don't allow yourself. Austin, if you're listening, don't allow yourself, and you did a good job. I'm going to say he did a good job in articulating himself and responding to those questions. But I'm going to say this, you don't have to answer every question, Austin. You don't have to answer every question. Some of the questions that he asked were too personal. He didn't have to respond to any question. And also, you remember, you forced these people to come correct. You forced them to come correct. You forced them to clarify the terms when they start throwing out these terms loosely. You forced them to clarify what you mean by this. What do you mean by that? When you're using this legal term, what do you mean? When you're suggesting that I'm engaging in criminal activity or organizing criminal activity, I need you to clarify that. I don't quite understand. I need you to clarify. You force them to clarify. Because those Fox News people and everybody else, they were filled with ignorance. They did no homework, no research on Passport Bros. All they know is they saw the stuff trending on social media and they just ran with it without doing any type of work, being intellectually lazy and being morally disingenuous. But at the end of the day, brothers, you don't explain. Just in general, I'm doing this video for Passport Bros. This video is for Passport Bros and for people who want to be Passport Bros, or people who like Passport Bros, people who support Passport Bro, SYSBM, travel ideology. This stream is for you. And we speak primarily to men. My audience is a male, fundamentally 99% of my audience is Black and male. 99%. You know, a whole bunch of women don't come over here because they know that I speak directly to you if you are a Black man. And I don't explain my travels. I don't explain none of that stuff to any hater of Passport Bros. If you're a Black man who wants to travel and you want more information about travel, I will talk to you and we can talk about travel ideology. If you are genuinely interested in travel ideology, we can have a conversation. But if you are antagonistic to travel ideology, if you are antagonistic to SYSBM, no, we're not having a conversation. We're not debating it. It's not for debate. Any Black man exercising his agency, traveling to anywhere, that's not up for debate. What a Black man does in any country that he goes to, that's not up for debate. or interrogation. It's not. If I share with you what happens when I travel, I do that. That's just me. That's me being generous. But you are under no obligation whatsoever to divulge anything that you do as you engage the world. I'm excited, guys. 2023 is a good year. Listen, guys, I'm getting ready to sign out, man. I didn't mean to be out here this long, man, but I just really wanted to speak to this situation. I'm excited about Passport Bros, travel, SYSBM, and everything, guys. This is not going away. This is going to be here forever, man. I appreciate all your support on a Friday night. I know there are other streams coming on later on at 8 o'clock and at 9 o'clock and what have you. I don't want to take up all your time, guys, because this is a weekend, man. I want you guys to have thank you, Coach Lamont. Good to see you, man. I want you guys to have an awesome weekend, make it a safe weekend. You know what I'm saying? Have fun, peace and happiness. Here's the most thing. I want you to have a BMH. I want you to have a Black Men's Happiness weekend, guys. Black Men's Happiness. BMH. I want you to have a weekend that is filled with peace and happiness. I want you to have a weekend filled with peace and happiness. And more broadly, I want your lives as Black men to be lives that are filled with peace and happiness. And that's why we do this, and that's why we talk about travel and travel ideology. This is ultimately about peace and happiness. BMH, Black Men's Happiness. BMHP, happiness and peace. Don't let anyone convince you that as a Black man that you should not have peace and that you should not do anything within your power, whatever you can do to achieve peace and happiness. Because that belongs to you. Anyway, my brother, I'm getting ready to get on out of here, man. Kings and Queens, good to see you, man. Good to see you, man. Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, sir. Ben Cisco, good to see you, man. Good to see you, good to see you, man. Good to see you, good to see you, good to see you, good to see you, man. Good to see you, good to see you. Thank you for that. I'm getting ready to sign out, guys. Again, this is another Mad Professor broadcast, and we do this in service of Black men's independence, Black men's agency, Black men's empowerment, and most of all, Black men's happiness. I'm out. Have a good weekend and enjoy. The Mad Professor is out.